Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. The chairman of the board, David Reed, is here. Hello, David Reed.
Good afternoon, sir. Have you recovered from the disappointment of last night?
I'm very disappointed. Very disappointed about what happened to the Predators, but, usually I say I give things away because I'm in a good mood. We'll give something away this hour to see if that helps put me in a better mood. Plus, we don't always give things away in the 2 o'clock hour, so I want to be fair, with how we do our giveaways. So we'll give something away this hour. Reed, I got to tell a story.
Okay, I love story
years
time.
and years and years ago. This was when I lived in an apartment complex. It's one of the best, if not the single best apartment complex in all of Nashville, Villa Adrian, right there off of 8th Avenue in Melrose. And I lived at Villa Adrian, and there was this one woman, and I just loved her. That kind of love at first sight becomes kind of a crush. Now you've got a shot. Now, that feeling. And there was one night where I felt like this woman was digging me. I mean, just digging me. And I thought, here's my chance. Here's my opportunity. I'm so close. And I must have been 25, 26 at the time, something like that. And it got away from me. I don't know if it's my fault. I don't know if it would have never happened. I don't know. But it got away from me. I was so upset. I was so disappointed. And as I walked into the door at my apartment complex at the time, I said to myself, well, this is what it's like being a Titans and a Preds fan. Never get your hopes up too high for the Titans. Never get your hopes too high for the Predators, or else you'll be like me that night walking into my apartment complex the same way I felt when Pekka Rinne crapped his pants in Game 7 of the Winnipeg series, and I watched what would have been at least another 2 weeks because they would have made the Western Conference Final. But I seriously believe if they had won that Game 7, they would have won that cup that year. But at least another 2 weeks of great radio excitement, a shot at the cup, and everything just all fall apart in, 2-3 minutes? I felt the same way when Ryan Tannehill opened up the playoff game against the Bengals by throwing an interception. People ask me, Jared, why are you so negative all the time? And it's not that I'm negative, it's that I'm skeptical. Because the first true heartbreak in my life was watching Ray Lewis run into the end zone in the 2000 divisional round game against the Titans. There was 5 minutes to go. The Titans were down by 2 scores. I looked at my dad as a 5th grader and said, are we going to lose? And my dad looked at me definitively and said, yes. I'm not sure if I've ever really gotten over that Ravens loss, although when the Titans went to Baltimore and pulled that favor on them a couple years ago, it certainly felt very good. So that's why I'm so negative. That's why I'm so skeptical, because I've lived it as a Titan fan, as a Predator fan. And last night was absolutely Black Monday for the Nashville Predators. The worst, unexpected, godforsaken season took the expected turn that I knew was coming. The 5th overall pick. It doesn't get worse than that. This is a draft that has 2 high-end, impactful, for sure, top-line guys in it. They needed one of the top 2 picks. Instead, they got the 5th pick. I remember how disappointed Danny Ainge was after they had a terrible season when he was general manager of the Boston Celtics. They got the worst possible result in the then Greg Oden, Kevin Durant draft lottery. Ultimately, they turned around and traded for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, and it ended up working out for them. But I'll never forget that day hearing this was the worst possible outcome and seeing the dismay on everybody's face. And that's how I felt last night at 6:28 or whatever time it was. So the Predators have decided as an organization that last season was a one-off and that Andrew Burnett will return as the coach. The core of the team will return on the ice next season. The goalie, whose 8-year contract is about to kick in and has never won a playoff series, is firmly entrenched. And now the Predators won't get one of the top picks in the draft. Truthfully, as a fan of this team, which I am, I do not think I could be more devastated. Now, again, it wasn't the end of the world last night because I mentally prepared myself for this to happen. But to see the Islanders, who finished with 14 more points than the Predators, that's 7 victories, nab the number 1 pick. Or to see Utah, a division rival, who had 21 more points than the Predators did, slot in 4th ahead of them, was just disgusting. Now, this isn't anybody's fault. It's not like Barry Trotz could have done anything differently. It's not the league's fault. We all knew the lottery rules ahead of time. We can't cry about the draft being fixed because I saw some people yesterday on Twitter after the draft say, rigged, New York gets the top pick, rigged. I said, we saw the freaking ping pong balls. You can't say it was rigged. But that doesn't mean that you can't be disappointed. This past season was a complete and total train wreck from the very, very beginning. From the first game, when the new 8-year contract, full no-move goalie couldn't suit up in game 1 against the Dallas Stars. We've been over the losing. We've been over the coach. We've been over the general manager. We held his ass to the fire about this every single week of the season. The uninspiring play, the defensive meltdowns, the horribleness of the goalie, the Scarbinis added throughout the course of the year. But as I sat through, as again, a proud Predators ticket holder, as I sat through that godforsaken season, I kept assuring myself it would be okay. It would be okay if the Predators could get one of the top 3 picks in the draft. Again, there are 2 high-end guys. Hagens is the 3rd guy everybody keeps lumping in there, but it sounds like Misa and Schaefer are in a class by themselves. I wasn't even trying to get too greedy. Give me one of the 3 best players in this draft. They're picking 5th. That whole season was for naught. The horrendous waste of everybody's time. Again, I'm not going to sit here and cry about everybody's money if you're a ticket holder because, yeah, I mean, it's expensive to go to games, and I get it. And it definitely felt like a waste this season, but it's not as if they deceived us. And we are aware of what happens in sports. But just the time, the games watched, the finagling at the beginning of the year to log into a Fire Stick to sign up to be able to watch the freaking channel the Predators are on. Again, it was for nothing. And thinking long-term hope of the team, really at this point, I don't have anything to say to you. I can't just cheer you up and say it'll be okay because I'm not convinced that it will be okay. This is as bad as it could possibly have gone for the Predators. Number 1, they didn't get the first pick. Number 2, they didn't get the second pick. They didn't win the second draw. Number 3, teams with worse odds than them both got the top picks. And because Utah was so much better at 14th worst odds or whatever you want to call it, they slot in right ahead of you. So division rival Chicago, they only dropped down 1 spot. So you've got now 2 division rivals picking ahead of you. It couldn't have gone any worse for the Predators. And there may be some silver lining 5 years from now where James Higgins really was the best player and he falls to them. Roger McQueen is the best player in this class, but he got hurt and he gets healthy. And when he comes back, he turns into a superstar at 6'5". But we don't know that. Again, that's all wishful thinking. And if there is anything that I have learned over my 2 decades plus as a Titans fan and as a Predators fan, it is to assume that the good fortune and good luck will come your way is foolish. When's the last time the ball did bounce the Titans' way? When's the last time the Predators just got so lucky? I'll wait. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. No way to sugarcoat this. It could not have been any worse. The only thing you could do about it to make it any better is to go back to the season and with those 6-game losing streaks, make them 9-game losing streaks. That's the only thing it could have been. And then you'd be picking third and not picking fifth. But that's all you got. Truly abysmal. 615-737-1025. Now, I heard Barry Trotz say this. I heard Robbie Stanley say this. I saw Alex Doherty tweet this. Derek Mason was trying to, I don't want to say kind of fake it, that he was thinking this, but it felt that way in that last segment I did with the midday show. Jared, we're still picking fifth. It's not like we're picking 30th. We'll still get a good player. Sure. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
What does number 5 do for you? Where do you head from there?
Well, we're in the process of all the meetings right now upstairs. I sat in with our scouts today. I feel that even at the moving back a couple spots in number 5, we're going to get a good player. I don't have any doubt about that. What it might do, depending on once we get the order, we're probably going to put a couple of plans into place. I'll have to make some phone calls and follow through with some of our plans. So. I think, when we get through with all the process, we have the combine coming up, as well as some interviews with the players, especially what we think is probably the guys will be in probably the top 10 for sure. We'll do a lot of background checking, do all that. And once we get that in order, we'll try to figure out what everybody else is doing and have a few plans in place to go in the direction we need.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz last night. He didn't sound devastated. I feel like I could be a team owner and actually be pretty good at it. I know you people are like, but Jared, you're so reactive. You're crazy. Yes, because I have a 4-hour show to do every day that is an opinion show that is sharing opinions. If I'm the owner of the team, I'm not going to go walk down into the lunchroom and say, hey, Rashawn Evans, you suck. There is a difference between the two. And I think I could be an owner because in this instance, you don't have to meet with the media. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to talk to anybody. I can handle that. To be in Barry Trotz's position last night, where he's talking with the media and he's asked about the fall to number 5, and he's talking about, well, Will's still a good player. I sat in on the scouting meetings today, and I felt really good about some of the things we talked about, and so we'll go through the combine, we'll go through the process, and we'll still get a really good player. I don't know if I can put lipstick on that pig. Because while, yes, you're not picking 35th, you're picking 5th, the NHL is different than the NFL. And I need people to understand that because a lot of us, when it comes to kind of the nooks and the crannies of the NHL, probably don't investigate it as much as we would say the NFL. In the NFL, you absolutely have a better chance at drafting Andrew Luck if you have the number 1 overall pick. But there's no saying that the 5th overall pick in a draft or the 18th overall pick in a draft or Patrick Mahomes at 10. There's nothing to say that that player can't be the best player in that draft. And I'm not even going that Tom Brady route and saying, the whole league got it wrong. And that, because that is, that's not just generationally screwed up. That's all time screwed up. The NBA is actually somewhat similar. Again, remember when Greg Oden went ahead of Kevin Durant. Remember when Sam Bowie went ahead of Michael Jordan. That doesn't really happen in the NHL. If you want the impactful, game-changing forward, which traditionally is what you have to have in today's game in order to win, you have to take that guy with the 1st or 2nd pick. And it really is that simple. Now, some years, it's a bad year to get the 1st pick. I.e. Nico Hischier, who's not a bad player, but he's not Connor McDavid. Other years, it's Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Austin Matthews with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I just, off the top of my head this morning, thought about this. The recent Stanley Cup champions. Let's go over, the last decade. Last year, Florida won the Cup. Their star forward, Alexander Barkov, taken number 2 overall. That was a draft, by the way, where the Predators held the 4th pick and got Seth Jones. Seth Jones is on the Florida Panthers. He's a 2nd-pair defenseman in the NHL. Top-line championship-winning forward, 2nd-line defenseman. I would argue the 2nd-best forward on the Florida Panthers is Sam Reinhart. Remember all the talk about how great it would be if the Predators could get him in free agency? Sam Reinhart, number 2 overall. Vegas won the Cup a couple of years ago. Jack Eichel, number 2 overall. Now, they didn't draft him. They traded for him. But he was having some sort of exploratory neck surgery and worked his way out of Buffalo. And that's not very likely to happen again where that kind of player gets out there and you can acquire him. And even if he did, the Predators would never do what it takes to get that kind of player. Colorado won the Cup in 2022. Nathan MacKinnon, number 1 overall. Before that, Tampa won back-to-back Cups. Steven Stamkos, number 1 overall. You have to go all the way back to the 2019 St. Louis Blues to find a team that wasn't led by a guy who was picked 1st or 2nd overall and won the Cup. And that Blues team still had some high draft picks on it. They had Braden Shen on that team, who was a high draft choice. They had Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, he wasn't a super high choice. I want to say he was 16, 17, 18 overall, something like that. That's the one team. And the 2019 St. Louis Blues are the one team that I would just say, don't ever reference them. You're probably not going to be the worst team in the league on January 1st and still win the Cup. You're probably not going to be led by your goalie and find a way to win the Cup. You're probably not going to have a forward on your team who wasn't 1st or 2nd overall and still win the Cup. Because after that in 2018, Washington had Alexander Ovechkin, number 1 overall. 2016, 2017, we remember that with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby, number 1 overall. And the 2015 Chicago Blackhawks had Patrick Kane, who was drafted, wait for it, number 1 overall. This isn't the NFL. This isn't the NBA. The drop-off from 1 to 5 is almost massive on a consistent basis in this league. That's why I kept saying all year when it came to Predators Game Day, and we're trying to fill this sponsored segment, which we love, and we love our sponsors. But on Predators Game Day, I'm sitting there throughout the course of the year. All right, the Predators tonight are taking on the Flyers, and the Predators are 23-42, and that's good for 50 points, which is almost dead last. And I said it openly because, again, I don't own the team, so I can't say these things openly. Go other team. Lose. Because if you're going to be this bad, go be that bad. Don't dilly-dally in the middle. Don't get hot and try to convince yourself, oh, we can make the playoffs, Jared. Anything can happen because the 2019 no. Lose. And to their credit, they lost. Now, they didn't lose as much as Chicago. They didn't lose as much as San Jose. But to their credit, once Christmas came around and it was obvious there was no corner for this team to turn, they lost. And so I went into this fully aware the ping pong balls have to fall your way. I went into this fully aware that, hey, if you still get to 3, maybe you can still get a good player. Get Jonathan Taves, 3rd overall. Maybe you can still get one of these players. But picking 5th, there's no way around it. You're porked. It's as simple as that. Unless, again, you're the 2019 Blues. The one exception to the rule. They were the worst team in the league at the start of the new year. They called up a rookie goaltender from the minors who didn't freaking lose a game. And apparently, and I felt bad for him the other night because I felt like he did his job and the other goalie, Hellebuck, didn't, but has the biggest pair in the league when it comes to these big games and big moments. They had the right coach, the right attitude. They won the Cup in Game 7. But it's not that simple. It's really not that simple. It's hard. You got to pick 1 or 2. And I know right now it's easy to look at it and say, well, San Jose has been picking 1 and 2 and they stink. Right. But in 6 years, they won't be picking 1 or 2 because Macklin Celebrini will be really good. Chicago won't be picking 1 or 2 in 6 or 7 years because Connor Bedard will be that good. With you, like Roger McQueen, yay. Again, just look at the comparisons that they have on the TSN websites and the NHL website. And It's like you're going from a star, true impact big boy forward to Quentin Byfield. You're not going to win the cup with that. 615-737-1025. We'll hit some phones. 615-737-1025. Plus, I got to play a cut that I heard last night on the draft show, and I'm not going to lie, it did make me chuckle. As upset and as disappointed as I was yesterday, you've got to hear it. We'll get to that next. And your phones, 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. And let me tell all the fine folks, tune in today to 1025 The Game for Vandy Baseball as the Commodores take on Louisville in Louisville. And I got to say, I don't often root against Vandy. We are a proud partner with Vanderbilt. We are the proud flagship station, but I'm rooting for the Cards today, baby. Pre-game begins at 5:45. First pitch is at 6. Go Cards! Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com.
Chase, who is the best Predator of all time? Who would you say?
There's a statue of him.
Pecorino.
Pecorino. Where did he go? He must have been.
He was
third. No,
yeah, he was in a round that doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
So,
I mean, look, you can get good
guys,
players.
settle
Shea
down.
Weber was the second round.
Settle down.
What round were you drafted?
I was in the 8th round.
It
we
doesn't
don't have
exist
that anymore.
We
But
don't
you were
have
pretty
that
damn
anymore.
good.
When your best player for your organization doesn't have a round anymore, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
what
good
was
players.
Yossi?
Of
And
course,
I would venture
everyone
to say-
wants the best player you can get, but you don't know what these kids are going to end up like, and so we are what we are. It is what it is.
Hal, don't be giving me that bull crap. I'm sitting there watching this draft lottery, and I'm watching the Predators just get porked by the ping pong balls. They didn't get porked by Gary Bettman. It's not rigged. We saw the ping pong balls. We saw them. Now, look, I've been to Vegas. I went to Lance Burton. I've seen magicians, but I don't think they pulled any phony crap over there. We saw the ping pong balls go into the machine. We saw the machine. This is not the numbers game from Harlem in the 20s. We saw the ping pong balls going up and down. We saw them come out. You didn't get porked by the league, but you got porked by the lottery. And here's how. And I got in the car last night after the draft lottery was over, and I was on my way and I was listening to the show, and they did a fantastic job. I mean this with all love and respect in my heart. And here's Hal saying it'll be okay because Pecorino was an 8th round pick. And if Pecorino could be an 8th round pick, and I thought, oh God. You want to know what the biggest problem with the Predators is? In my opinion, big picture, why the Predators have never won. Because they haven't had the top picks in the draft. You can get very, very close doing it that way. With a hot goaltender, with the right coach, with just the right core group of guys, all at their peak at the right time. Good luck and, all of that. And you can get really, 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 really close. But they didn't win. They lost. You want to know why they lost? Reed, you were at those Cup final games, were you not?
Yes, I was.
Do you know why they lost?
I've tried to erase a lot of that from my memory. But I still blame officials. I'm one of those guys. But yeah, there was another guy on the ice that was pretty good. There's pretty high draft pick.
They had Sidney Crosby. That's why you lost. And so, again, I've said this for years when it comes to the Predators, and I've said this for years specifically with Hal. But again, that mentality they have of, hey, we're okay. Pecorino was an 8th round pick, and we built a statue for him, and 0 cups. What did the great Eric Dickerson say? We want to win. We don't want to almost win. And again, unless you're the 2019 Blues, the exception to the rule, you got to be picking at the top of the draft, period. Not picking in the top-ish of the draft, picking at the top of the draft. McKinnon, Stamkos, Barkov, Eichel, McDavid, Crosby, Ovechkin, Kane. You're picking 5th. Hal, I love you, but don't give me that bull crap. Don't give me the, it'll be okay. Peck will win in the 8th round. No, it will not be. There is no way to slice it other than you got screwed last night. It sucks. And unless you want to suck again next year, which if Andrew Burnett's the coach and he's lost the room like I think he has, that may happen. But unless you want to suck again next year, I just don't know how you're getting to the top. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Trey says, Jared, am I the only one who was completely devastated when they were drawing for the second pick and the last ball that they pulled out looked like a 13 in the tube, only to come out as a 3? So I knew 3 wasn't what they needed, but I was like, is it 3 or 4 that they need? Because they needed 4 or 13. When they flashed those second pick odds up there and I saw the Predators and that they had a real shot and there were 2 ping pong balls, oh my God. oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And they take the ping pong ball out, and I saw 3, and I'm like, I think they need 4, not 3. But I wasn't totally sure. And then, of course, the one thing that I have got to knock the draft lottery on last night, I thought the presentation, for the most part, was good. The 2 things I didn't like. Number 1, when they were doing the second pick, they spent too much time talking hockey. Get back to the ping pong balls. I don't need to hear Kevin Weeks and that guy who looks like he's selling Molson's. I do not need them to break down the picks yet. I just get back to the ping pong balls. And 2, once that 4th ping pong ball would come up, like, I have no freaking clue what 1439 means. I have no idea. You do. You've got it in front of you. Instead, they have Sebastian over there kind of writing down everything like he's Vanna White. And then he turns around and he hands the card to the deputy commissioner, and the deputy commissioner pretends he's Roger Goodell and takes it. The second pick in the draft belongs to the San Jose Sharks. And it's like, TV, just tell me. Like, once that ball comes up, say, San Jose is going to be number 2 because Utah can't go up that high. Oh, goodness gracious. One texter says, are you discrediting James Higgins? Regardless, he will go 3. Some of the mock drafts are saying that Higgins may fall to 5. I think that's probably one of the best, and I have another theory, which I'll throw out there. Best case scenario for the Predators, but if Higgins falls to 3, it's because he's either too small or too weak or not enough of a goal scorer, and we'll look back on it and say, yeah, he wasn't really that good. Again, I mean, I can pull up the list of 5th overall picks. It is sad. Again, I don't want to do the, they are talking about, Hal, what round were you taken in? Yeah, I was taken in the 8th round. See? No, Hal, I love you. We need better players than you, Hal. Here you go. Let's go back to 2020 and go from there, just because, again, this Ivan Demidov that was taken number 5 overall last year, he might end up being good. I have no idea. But they're too young right now to get too excited. Project like 7 years out. Jake Sanderson to the Ottawa Senators went 5 in 2020. Now, I do know who that is because he played on Team USA in the Four Nations, and I was like, who the hell's that? Now, Reed, we have a rule on this show I don't think that I've introduced to you yet, which is if there's a player in the NHL that I've never heard of, then he stinks. That is a maxim that we have for this one rule. I feel like I know who the good players are.
I feel like that you had to have pretty in-depth knowledge of the NHL to proclaim that.
I really don't. I mean, I watch the Predators, and then I watch some of the playoffs. And when I watch in the playoffs, there's a lot of, oh, he's on that team now? Because I don't watch like TNT game of the week. I'm not watching that. I got other things to do. So I'm not a hockey savant. I'm not Robbie Stanley. I'm not going to try to be. But so if I have not heard of you, you stink. So what happens is the Predators will trade for somebody. Pred's Twitter will say, he's good. And then it ends up being Mikhail Granlund, who I've never heard of. And I'm like, nope, he's not that good. Now, when they acquired PK Subban, I knew who that was. He's good. So that's my new theory. Alex Turcotte with the Kings. Don't know who he is. Barrett Hayton was the number 5 pick in 2018. Never heard of him. Elias Pettersson with the Canucks in 2017. Now, Elias Pettersson is good. But the problem with Elias Pettersson is they get to the playoffs and he disappears because he must not be that good. Just like last year. You remember how much we talked about Pettersson in that series before the Vancouver series? And it was really JT Miller and Brock Besser and Elias Lindholm and your own pants crapping that cost you that series. Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson were almost no factors in that series. Oli Julevi with the Canucks. Never heard of him. Noah Hannafin with the Hurricanes. Solid defenseman. But again, you're not winning because of Noah Hannafin. Michael Dal-Colley. Never heard of him with the Islanders in 2014. Elias Lindholm, who I really do like, is one of my favorite players on other teams in the league. He was the 5th pick in 2013, but he's a second-line center. He's not Crosby. He's not McDavid. He's not one of those guys. He's a good player, but you don't need that. You need Ace. You see the point? Again, other guys worth noting. Nino Niederreiter was a 5th overall pick. Luke Shen was a 5th overall pick. Phil Kessel was a 5th overall pick. Now, he ate too many hot dogs, and that was probably his big issue. But again, you're not winning the cup with these guys. Thomas Vanek scored 1 million goals, picked 5th overall, scored 1 million goals in Buffalo. But he never won anything. That's the thing that bothers me. All right, more of your phones. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Adam Vigen's blowing up my phone, so I know it's going to be one of these. What do you mean you've never heard of Oli Julevi? He's so good, but I've never heard of him. And again, if I don't know who you are, you suck. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 125 the game.
Were you kind of planning all along to kind of like knowing that this was probably the most likely scenario is dropping to 4 or 5?
Well, I think when we understood how the lottery works, yeah, you're in that position where you're out against the field in terms of the odds that there is a likelihood that could happen. I was hoping it didn't, but at the same time, I feel like I say, I feel very comfortable. We're still going to get a good player to add to our pool, and it'll all depend on what happens in front of us in terms of the teams. I'll try to get a better handle on that as we. I'm sure all the teams are now in their draft meetings, or if they're not in that process right now, they will be shortly. And there'll be a lot of work ahead of us from now to the draft. So, but I feel very confident we're going to get a good player.
We're going to get a good player. Yeah, just not good enough. That's the problem. Josh on the text line says 3 segments bitching about something that no one has any control over. Correct. That's how devastating last night's lottery was. Tim is up next here on our program. Tim, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, Jerry, listen, we've got 3 first-round picks. Can't we bundle them together and move up?
Okay, that's a very good question. Now, and Tim, I'm going to let you go on that because I think that's a good question, and it takes me to something that I do want to bring up. In the NHL, again, this is not football, where in football – the 10th overall pick has probably, we deep down inside know, like in football, unless Elway or Andrew Luck or one of those guys is sitting there, the 9th overall pick has as good of a shot to hit as the 6th overall pick. That is traditionally not what happens in the NHL. That it is usually 1 or 2. And if you get 1 or 2, you don't trade it. Like imagine if this were the Connor McDavid draft. And you picked up the phone today and said, hey, what would it take for us to get up to number 1? They would laugh you out of the building. Like last year, nobody was going to take that pick from San Jose. Barry Trotz in 23. There were 4 elite players in the draft in 23 here at Bridgestone Arena. Barry Trotz offered the equivalent of 4 first-round draft choices to try to move up into the top 4 to draft Will Smith, who might end up being a winger or their second-line center behind Celebrini in San Jose. And San Jose said no. This draft might be a little different. And San Jose, who's got Celebrini, has Will Smith. It seems like the Islanders are going to take the Schaefer kid, number 1, who's a defenseman. San Jose is just desperate for blue line help in its prospect core. I do wonder if San Jose would be willing to swing a deal. Now, if I was Barry Trotz and I was calling San Jose, it would be painful. And I would know that when I pick up the phone. Like I would pick up the phone knowing I'm calling San Jose and this to try to move from 5 to 2, and it's going to be painful. This is what I think a conservative package would look like. And I mean conservative. Number 5, Mullendijk. Tampa Bay's 1, which is going to be better than Vegas's 1. David Edstrom, who San Jose gave you in the Yaroslav Askarov deal. And they may want your unprotected 1 next year. And again, I think that might be conservative. I don't think there are players on your team that they would want to move from 2 to 5. The only question is this. Would they do Mullendijk and move to 5 where they could take the second best defenseman and say, okay, we got 2 defensemen plus another first plus Edstrom back in our system? Like, would that be enough? But you could do that. And maybe they would consider it. Scott Wheeler at The Athletic said, every year when I do Q&As and mailbags around this time, I get asked just as much about potential trades as I do the actual players. If you followed my work, and Scott Wheeler is the NHL prospect guy for The Athletic. If you followed my work, he writes, you'll know that almost always my answers are a letdown. It's hard to make trades on draft day, especially in the first round. Top picks almost never get moved. Trade ups and trade downs are almost always in small increments. But this year, he writes, does feel like it's more ripe for action for a couple of reasons. So maybe the Predators could make a move. But it's not just going to be like, okay, let's trade Tampa's one and Vegas is one, and let's move from 5 to 2, which would make sense in the NFL. That is not going to be enough in the NHL. That's just not how it's going to work. Matthew says, Joe and Robbie brought this up this morning, that the Predators have 3 first-round picks, and they could try to package and move up, and who knows, maybe Barry could swindle somebody into taking Marchessault, Brady Shea, or Stamkos. I mean, Poyle got someone to trade for the $1 million man Kyle Turris a few years ago. Number one, that's not true. They bought out Kyle Turris. They did not trade Kyle Turris. Again, when it comes to trading with San Jose, they're not interested in Brady Shea. Like, they're not interested in old players. Again, like if I'm San Jose and I'm on the phone with you and I've got all the cards, I am gunning for next year's first unprotected, which could be nothing because you could be back in the playoffs. I mean, again, you listen to the Predators talk, and it sounds like they think they're going right on their way back into the playoffs like they were 2 years ago. And then that first-round pick, unprotected, isn't that big of a deal. But if you suck again, that first-round unprotected pick could be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And next year's draft is a little bit better. One texter says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the direction of the Predators now and in the future? I feel like in the NHL drafts, I wouldn't look at the pick, but what's around it. There's surely a good to star player in the first round. It's just a matter of scouting. Nah. Again, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a guy that you can win some games with? Or are we talking about a guy you can win the cup with? Now, that being said, scale of 1 to 10, how confident am I in the direction of the Predators? 3. And I'm not even worried about next year. Like, hey, if next year's fun and they make the playoffs, they're not going to compete for the cup next year. But, I mean, to me, they're banking on their big picture philosophy is, and the prospect gurus say that these guys aren't that good. Wood, Mullendijk, Edstrom, Stiga Surin, Andrew Gibson, Reed Schaefer, like that group of prospects, they're convinced that when those guys are ready, that they're going to be very, very good. And I just don't believe it. I believe it's more like Svechkov and LaRue, whereas they probably look at these guys coming in here and being like Logan Stankoven and Wyatt Johnson. So, again, I give it a 3. 615-737-1025. All right, enough complaining about the draft lottery and the Predators. And coming up next, there is something that the Ravens general manager said. Ravens are pretty good, right? Like if it comes to the Ravens, that's a team that we would look at and we would say, hey, they know what they're doing. So there is something the Ravens general manager said that I found fascinating and did a dive on today in regards to the Titans. We'll get to that coming up next. Be caller 5. Let's give something away. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you will score a pair of tickets to Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin evening at the Ryman Auditorium on Thursday, May 15th. Again, that's 615-737-1025. Caller 5 wins right now. Good luck. Stillman and Company, 1025 again. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Now, every sport, whether it's hockey, basketball, football, baseball, whatever, is a copycat league. Again, I've talked about this all the time. You want to know why all these Nick Saban assistant coaches kept getting hired? Because everybody just wanted a little secret sauce from Nick Saban. That, hey, maybe if we get Will Muschamp or Kirby Smart or Jeremy Pruitt, we'll get a little of that Nick Saban secret sauce and we ourselves can win the way Alabama does. And that's no different across any sport. Well, when it comes to the NFL, I'd say the Ravens are a pretty good example of how to do business. They win a lot, eh? The Ravens, the Eagles, the Rams, the Chiefs, the Bills, the teams that win a lot. That's who you should follow. For years, I believed in the Patriot way because I actually thought that was why they were winning, not because they had the greatest quarterback of all time. But now that I've realized that, I've given up on the Patriot way. Like somebody who was once a member of a cult and no longer is. So at some point this weekend, I was perusing Twitter on my phone. I can't even remember what I was doing this weekend that would have made me see this, but I saw this video. Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, did a post-draft interview with the team's podcast. You know, all these teams have podcasts now, even though they don't have talented podcast hosts that are any interesting, but they get all the best people and they only ask them easy questions. And so I guess that's what Eric DeCosta did. And so they were sitting down with Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Ravens. Again, I'd say pretty good general manager. And here's what he said about their philosophy when it comes to making picks in the draft.
An important study called The Loser's Curse by Richard Thaler, who's an economist, and Cade Massey, who's a professor at Penn now. And the idea of it basically is that teams simply don't do any better drafting than anyone else. You're all going to be about the same, right? So the idea that you're going to trade up and basically that the draft is inherently sort of a luck-driven process. Now, I don't believe that, but there is an element of luck involved. So if you think about that and if you accept that premise, then you're trading up for a player that you think is better than anyone else, right? And you think that team's going to draft him.
Right.
But most of the time, they're not going to draft that player. And so what we've seen over the years is that player is probably going to fall to you. Could he be selected? Yes, but there's no guarantees that player is going to be better than the player that you end up getting.
Yeah.
So they call it the loser's curse because the team at the top, it's like, oh, he's got the first pick in the draft. Well, you know what? The player that they select, we've seen this many times. There's no guarantees that player is going to be better than the player that gets selected at 25 or 30 in the first round. And so all things being equal, I know I'm doing a lot of talking about this, but it's a passion of mine. All things being equal, right? The fact that no one really knows who's going to be better than anyone else, the only rational approach is to get more at-bats,
right?
Is to pick more.
Tells you right there. And again, this isn't some Mickey Mouse operation. This is Wharton. This is Penn, one of the finest institutions in the country. And he's saying, the loser's curse says when you trade up, you might be trading for a player that the team you think is going to pick isn't even going to pick because they don't see him the way you see him. It reminds me of a story Floyd told, which was in the 1999 draft. The Tennessee Titans loved Javon Curse, the edge rusher out of Florida. Now, Javon Curse wasn't necessarily an edge rusher because he had played in a lot of different spots at a lot of different positions at Florida. So some teams didn't know what he was going to be. Is he going to be an off-ball linebacker? Is he going to gain weight and move inside to DT? He played some safety in college at Florida, so he could play anywhere. But they saw Javon Curse, and they were licking their chops for an outside defensive end in the 4-3. And as the picks came and came and came, they didn't think they'd get Javon Curse. All of a sudden, they're like, we may get Javon Curse. And Tampa Bay, I believe this is how the story goes. Tampa Bay was on the clock, one pick ahead of the Titans. They picked up the phone and they called Tampa Bay. They couldn't wait any longer. They said, all right, we want to make a trade. we want to move up one spot. We'll give you a fourth to be able to do it. And Rich McKay, who was the general manager at Tampa Bay at the time, said, no, we'd love the fourth, but we really like the player we're going to pick. So we're going to pick that player instead. And Floyd said his heart sunk, and he said, who is it? Said it's a defensive lineman. And he thought, oh, no. And Rich McKay said, Booger McFarland. Floyd said he couldn't have hung that phone up fast enough. Okay, see ya. We get Javon Curse. Again, you're trying to trade up for a guy that they weren't even going to take. And what is Eric DeCosta saying? Again, and I agree with him when he says most people believe that the draft is luck. It's not really luck because some teams are better at evaluating prospects better than others. And I would argue, too, at the same time, that some teams have better coaches and thus develop the players better. But basically, if you want to build a good team, you need to take more swings at the piñata. You need to have more throws at the dartboard. And that is one of the better general managers in the NFL citing a study from the Wharton Business School. And yet, what did the Titans do? The Titans picked a guy number one in the draft that they just had to have in spite of massive trade offers. This guy would not have been one of the top 3 quarterbacks taken in last year's draft. And according to the consensus, he won't be the top quarterback in next year's draft. But they just had to have him. We live in a society where everybody wants everything right now with no waiting involved. People like new cars over used cars because a new car is new. But everybody knows there's more value in used cars, right? You drive a car off the lot, depreciation sets in. What's the difference between a 2024 and a 2025? Credit cards, for instance, allow people to buy depreciating assets that they can't afford right now with the idea. And again, we all know this, even if you have a bunch of credit card debt, it's already baked in. You're going to pay significantly more for buying because you don't have the money right now. The Titans did the same thing. If the Titans had made the deal with the Giants, not only would the Titans have moved back only 2 spots, but they would have gotten another 3 throws at least at the dartboard. And I say maybe 4 because I bet you could have gotten the Giants to include pick 99, which was their second, third rounder in the deal too. But the Titans just had to have Cam Ward this year. Is it because the owner has no patience? Is it because they talked themselves into this wonderful story in La La Land about Incarnate Word to Washington State to Miami? Is it because they really think he's Joe Burrow? I don't know. But again, the Ravens don't subscribe to that theory. They say you need more at-bats. The Penn Business School doesn't get caught up in the warm fuzzies of 0-star recruit to Incarnate Word to Washington State. And so I actually wanted to read the study myself. I clicked on it today at like 12:15, and it's like 30 pages long, and it is detailed. So I stuck it into ChatGPT, and I said, analyze the story for me. Here you go. Here are the 3 facets of this major study. And again, this isn't Jared Stillman's opinion. This is the Penn Business School and the study that they have done. Number 1, the overvaluation of top picks. This is from ChatGPT. The study finds that NFL teams tend to overvalue early draft picks. Despite high expectations associated with top picks, the actual performance and surplus value of these players often do not justify their costs. 2, inefficient market practices. The widespread use of a standardized draft value chart by teams to guide trades is highlighted. The authors argue that this chart assigns inflated values to early picks, leading to inefficient market behaviors. Number 3, behavioral biases in decision-making. The research suggests that cognitive biases, such as an overconfidence and the allure of potential star players, influence teams to make suboptimal decisions, deviating from what would be expected in a rational, efficient market. Isn't that what we're talking about? Again, the behavioral biases in decision making, overconfidence, and the allure of a potential star player. But Jared Patrick Mahomes influences teams to make suboptimal decisions, deviating from what would be expected in a rational, efficient market. I'd say Baltimore knows what they're doing. They drafted Lamar Jackson, and they did it with their second first-round pick in 2018. Green Bay waited on Aaron Rodgers to come to them. The Titans only drafted Derrick Henry because they had 3 picks in the second round. But yet, we're supposed to say, screw the study. Cam Ward is the guy. Because I don't think the Ravens are doing that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I took what PK said was the package that the Giants offered for Cam Ward, 2 1s and 2 2s. I stuck it into Chat GPT. I said, all right, analyze this on the loser's curve. Again, this Wharton Penn Business School study, and tell me what you make of it. What Chat GPT had to say next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 the game.
There was a great piece that a guy put out about you a few weeks ago in The Athletic, and he put a piece in there that said the book Moneyball is what changed everything for you. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah. So I was in NFL Europe. I was an undrafted free agent that in 2003 with the New York Jets. Terry Bradway was the general manager at the time. Herman was the head coach, and they brought me in. Didn't make the team, and then later in the season they re-signed me and then allocated me to NFL Europe. And while playing in Europe, I ended up getting injured and put on IR. And at the time, they sent all the players who were on injured reserve to Birmingham, Alabama, which Health South. That's where Health South was, and that's where we went when we were on injured reserve. And Rochelle, my wife, was with me, and we were in this hotel, and I'm just bored out of my mind. And I'm a big reader as is, and so we went to the bookstore, and that's right around the time Moneyball came out, pretty close to it at least. And I bought it and I devoured that book in like 2 days. And I think people think it was about on base percentage, but it was about market efficiencies. I mean, I was just really just blown away.
That was Chad Brinker a year and a half ago talking about, I just love Moneyball and market inefficiencies. And I loved it. And we're bringing AI to the Titans. We're bringing analytics to the Titans. We're going to be smarter. Again, Chad Brinker, yeah, he played football, but it's not as if Chad Brinker was O.J. Simpson at USC. Chad Brinker was a Scarbini. And then he went to the Packers in a scouting role. Then he went to business school, got his MBA from Kellogg. We all know the AI cancer curing model that we made fun of and so on and so forth. But Chad Brinker projects as this intellectual, analytic football guy, a true executive. He's not some old ball coach who's got his dip in his mouth and saying, hey, I tell you, that man right there, man, I tell you, he goes out there and does that. He's not trying to be John Gruden, right? That's his brain. In fact, I remember when Mike Vrabel got fired. And the Titans, they told me, they were like, you'll see where our analytics are headed. Vrabel and his guys, they don't know anything about analytics. They're in the Stone Age, J-Rob and Cowden, and they don't know what they're talking about. But analytics. So we take the Wharton Business School, and we take their study. It's called The Loser's Curse. We just played the cut where Eric DaCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, says what it tells you is you need more throws at the dartboard. Don't get too caught up in third pick, fourth pick. And I know it's ironic because I spent the first hour of the show today complaining about the first pick in the NHL draft, but the NHL draft is very different from the NFL draft. And yet the Titans, with Mr. Moneyball running the team, the analytic guru from Kellogg, Northwestern Business School. Why did they spit in the face of that research? So I asked ChatGPT. I gave them what Paul Kaharski said the package was for Cam Ward, that the Giants offered 2 1s and 2 2s. I asked ChatGPT, quote, based on the Loser's Curse study, should the Titans have taken the Giants' reported offer, Tennessee trades pick 1-1, which was Cam Ward, for NYG pick 1-3, Abdul Carter, pick 34, 2026 first, and 2026 second. And you will never guess what ChatGPT said. Again, this is Brinker's wheelhouse, right? Analytics, business school, AI. I mean, this is Brinker, right? ChatGPT said yes. Based on the logic of the Loser's Curse study by Massey and Thaler, the Tennessee Titans should have seriously considered accepting the Giants' reported offer to move down from pick 1.01 used on quarterback Cameron Ward to pick 1.03 and acquired additional draft capital. According to the Loser's Curse study, top picks are systemically overvalued relative to their actual on-field production. Teams that trade down tend to generate more surplus value, the difference between player performance and salary costs. The decision makers are often overconfident in their ability to identify superstars at the top of the draft. And the expected performance drop between picks 1 and 3 is minor, while the added value of extra high picks like 34 and the future first and second is substantial. In evaluating the offer, the loser's curse logic says, and again, this is ChatGPT, this isn't me. The loser's curse logic says the difference between Cameron Ward and whoever might be at 1.03 is marginal in expected value, but large in perceived value. 4 premium picks are more likely to yield cost-effective talent and reduce risk. Quarterbacks in particular have high bust rates and are the most overvalued position in the draft. The behavioral insight. Passing on the trade is likely a result, again, this is ChatGPT. Passing on the trade is a likely result of overconfidence in Cam Ward's upside. Gee, who could have seen that coming? Loss aversion, the fear of missing out on their guy. Jared, what if the Giants get him and he turns into Mahomes? And sunk cost thinking from internal scouting investments. Bottom line, yes, the Titans should have accepted that offer. They passed on a value maximizing move to pursue a high variance outcome consistent with the loser's curse decision-making trap. It then asked, would you like an expected value breakdown of both options to quantify the decision further? To which I said, yes. Give me the value, ChatGPT. ChatGPT. Here's the expected surplus comparison. Titans keeping pick 1.01, Cameron Ward, 10 units. Titans trading down for pick 1.03, 2.02, and a 2026 first and second round pick, 24.5 units. Net gain from the trade, plus 14.5 units. Conclusion, quote, the Titans could have more than double their expected surplus value by accepting the Giants' offer. A classic case of avoiding the loser's curse by trading down. So somebody explain something to me. Yeah, I got one guy, the distinguished gentleman in the YouTube chat, and I love that man. But again, we thought for a while he was Rand's burner because he was so defensive of Rand for so long. Let Rand cook and, it's lockstep and a design tank and everything else. And he's saying now, who cares what the Ravens think? I care what the Ravens think. You know why I care what the Ravens think? Because the Ravens are smart. That's why I care what the Ravens think. But again, I'm looking at Brinker. I'm looking at the Titans. Isn't Chad Brinker supposed to be Mr. Analytics? Isn't Chad Brinker supposed to be Mr. Business School? Isn't Chad Brinker supposed to be Mr. Moneyball? And again, the cut that we ran, what did Brinker say? You know, people think that Moneyball is about on-base percentage, but it's not. It's about market inefficiencies. So here is a study that says, here's the market inefficiencies in the NFL and why NFL teams screw up. This is from Wharton, Penn's Business School, one of the most reputable business schools in the country. Here's the analytics that say the expected value of the trade with the Giants was 24.5 units, and Cam Ward represents 10 units. Again, this isn't Jared Stillman's wheelhouse we're talking about. My wheelhouse would be, here's Bill Polian and Rick Spielman and Mark Dominic and all these former general managers that Jared has a lot of respect for, and here's them saying that the Titans absolutely should have done XYZ. That's my wheelhouse. And I'll own it because I care what those guys think. But that's not Brinker's wheelhouse. Brinker's wheelhouse is business school, analytics, Moneyball. Here's Penn's Business School that, again, has a detailed survey saying, do not take Cam Ward. The reason teams take quarterbacks like Cam Ward is because they talk themselves into, what if he's not the guy? Or what if he goes to the Giants and he becomes Mahomes? Or what if that's the trap. So if Chad Brinker is so smart, will somebody explain to me what it is that he saw in Cam Ward that made him go against everything that the things he believes in, his brand says don't do? You know, it's funny because I was texting this with Willie. You know, I feel like Willie Donick and I, we've known each other now for a decade, and our relationship has been up and down at times, really more down at the beginning and up recently. But Willie and I have really bonded over the trade package that the Titans turned away from the Giants. And I sent Willie what ChatGPT said the Titans should do. And Willie was like, I brought up that study so many times. I brought it up with Caroline. I've brought it up with Derek. I've brought it up with Adam. We've talked about it on the show so many times, blah, blah, blah. And then he sends me an article from The Athletic. And Willie said, NFL teams know the best way to draft, so why aren't they doing it? This is where I saw the study. The underrated part of the article are the examples of people who acknowledge that the study has merit and yet still can't resist taking their guy when the moment comes. Again, why, if Chad Brinker is so smart, because he went to business school, if Chad Brinker loves Moneyball because it's about market inefficiencies, if Chad Brinker's in charge of the analytics department, then apparently, and I would say that the Titans did run numbers when John Robinson was the general manager, but the Titans were convinced was in the Stone Age under John Robinson. Why did Chad Brinker do the one thing that business school, the analytics, the numbers, the market efficiencies, why did he do the one thing that they said don't do? Somebody give me that answer. I guarantee you Chad Brinker's heard of that study before. So the Ravens will do it, but the Titans won't? Again, I'm not saying what they should or shouldn't have done. That's what AI, Brinker's thing, the one that finds cancer. That's what AI is saying the Titans should have done. 24.5 units compared to 10 units. So why go against everything he believes in? Unless he doesn't really believe in business school. Unless he doesn't really believe in Moneyball. Unless he doesn't really believe in analytics or AI. Again, I'm not chastising him right now. I'm just saying, why? Give me an answer. I'd love to know. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones on all of this. 615-737-1025. And I have a theory. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063. The Game. It is time for the 4th annual 615 Open Charity Golf Tournament. Cromwell Media, along with partners Fox 17, Outfront Media, and Social Indoor, are proud to announce that we'll be back at the Hermitage Golf Course on Thursday, May 29th to make a difference while having a great time. You can join us and a few guest media members, athletes, and musicians, such as Tegan Gase, who was just hosting the BCCMA Awards. She will be out there on the links as we raise money for Folds of Honor. Donations will go to provide life-changing scholarships to families of America's fallen or disabled military and first responders. Sign up to play or sponsor at 615open.com. Also, let's talk about Nashville's best deal. This one is delicious. Nashville's best deal of the week is celebrating National Barbecue Month. Right now, get $50 off a gift card to Central Barbecue in Capitol View for half off right now. Try their new barbecue sampler, ribs, wings, and barbecue sliders. Go to thegamenashville.com/deals right now while supplies last.
I've had a lot of conversations with Amy since January, and I'll just say this: Amy's fully on board with the plan, and she wants to become one of the elite franchises of the league. She believes in what we're doing. I really appreciate her and her support, and how she's really empowered us to do our jobs. I mean, I'm speaking on her behalf right now. We hired Mike to lead that process, particularly building this football team. I think she really believes in what we're doing, and we want to make her proud. So we're working hard to do that.
So that was Chad Brinker talking about, hey, Amy, she's behind us 100%. So again, I use the loser's curve, the loser's curse, which is a study done by the Wharton Business School 12 years ago. Eric DaCosta, the Ravens, supposedly they subscribe to it. And it says, hey, do not get too caught up in our picks, our guy, our spot. It says, again, using ChatGPT to summarize, if the Titans had taken the Giants' reported offer, which PK said was a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 in back-to-back years, if they had done that, then they would have given themselves 24 and a half units. Cam Ward represents, according to the study, 10 units. And so I'm asking, okay, so why would Chad Brinker, again, I understand you, Mr. Tighten Up, you're saying, this is our guy, Jared. I understand why you would say that, but why would Chad Brinker, Mr. AI, Mr. Analytics, Mr. Business School, why would he spit in the face of all of that to draft Cam Ward? And I don't have an answer for that. I do wonder, but I have a theory. Reed, are you ready for my theory? And I will lay out my theory, Reed, and then you tell me if you think this is crazy.
Okay.
Okay. And this was not on the grid, Reed. Back me up on this. This was not on the grid,
this was
so you
not,
don't even
because
know
I
what
was
this
just
is.
I was just looking to see exactly where we are, and we're off the rails already.
Okay. So here's my theory. Because again, what I said I would do is I said I would sign Sam Darnold to a contract. I would trade the pick. And I think you get even better offers than the Giants offer, because once you sign Sam Darnold, everybody and their grandma knows you're going to trade the pick. Sam Darnold signed for $37.5 million in cash this year from Seattle, with $27.5 million next year in cash. Screw the cap. We're not worried about the cap. It's fake. We're talking about the cash. So $37.5 for Darnold. Cam Ward, and they don't have the breakdown, so the values, there is a salary that goes with this, but I'm sure it's in like the $1 or $2 million range here. So let's just use the signing bonus. According to SpotTrack.com, Cam Ward, being the number 1 overall pick, is entitled to a $32 million signing bonus. That means that the second he signs that contract, Cam gets $32 million. My guess is Cam will make somewhere around $34-35 million this year, and then the number decreases significantly once the signing bonus gets paid out. So Cam represents, let's just say, $32 million. Well, that's already a savings of $5.5 million right there before we even get to the $27 million next year. Now, Abdul Carter, by being the 3rd pick, is entitled to a bonus of $29 million. And Jaden Higgins, who was the 34th pick in the draft, is entitled to a bonus of $5 million, 5.1 to be exact. That's $34 million. So just by taking 3 and 34, you're already paying in signing bonus money $2 extra million this year. Now, let's factor in next year's picks. I think the Giants are going to suck. Even if Cam Ward is the quarterback, even if Russell Wilson is the quarterback, even if Jackson Dart is the quarterback. I think they're going to suck. So, and I think most of us assume they're going to suck. Reed, do you assume they're going to suck?
I when I went and looked at their schedule, it made me more upset that the Titans didn't take the trade.
Okay. So let's say it's the same money. Now, the money will go up next year because it goes up every year. But let's say it's just the same money for the 3rd and 34th picks, and it's $34 million in signing bonus money. Again, that's what Carter and Higgins at 3 and 34 each got. So that's an extra $34 million because those are the Giants picks. You still have your picks, so you're going to have to pay your picks, plus you're going to have to pay the Giants picks. So that's an extra $34 million. Plus the 27.5 that Sam Darnold is owed next year. Well, once you factor in the extra $34 million plus the $27.5 million plus the extra $5 million this year you have to pay Darnold, all of a sudden you're approaching the extra $34 million this year, $34 million next year, $27.5 million. You're approaching $95.5 million. Factor in the $5 million that Darnold's going to make this year more than Cam Ward. That's $100 million. If you sign Sam Darnold or you sign Geno Smith or you signed one of those guys, and what did Paul report at the Combine? Paul said they would be interested in Darnold if the money came down. If you sign one of those guys, again, the going rate for a quarterback, for a franchise quarterback in the NFL right now is $55-60 million. Like, that's what Brock Purdy is going to sign for. But if you sign Sam for the 37.5 or the 27.5, and I think Geno is in the 40s now with his new contract. If you sign Geno and you take the Giants picks and you pay them this year and you pay them next year and you pay the quarterback, that is $100 million extra dollars. And I don't think Amy Adams Strunk is in the business while she's building a stadium, but really, period, I don't think she's in the business of paying $100 million extra dollars. Read your thoughts.
Yeah, this is the Titans are a Temu franchise. They are not willing to spend that money. But I think this move was as much about box office more than it is about the box score. I don't think they were interested in winning the next 2 seasons. I think they were interested in making a pick or making off-season moves that they thought were going to sell tickets to the new stadium. Even though they say tickets are going fine and ticket sales are going fine, I still think there's... Oh yeah,
Reed,
no, absolutely.
That's even more nickel and dimey than just the, hey, if we got to pay, $34 million twice in extra signing bonus money over the next 2 years, plus we're paying a quarterback because we're not drafting a quarterback. I mean, and it becomes $100 million. Like, that's one big $100 million. There's a lot of money. How much are they going to make in ticket sales, even if they're good, compared to whatever they already make to begin with? I don't think it's $100 million.
No, I don't think it is either, but I also don't pretend to know or think or come close to the train of thought that goes on in that building, especially from the top down.
Okay. So you don't think that you don't think that my theory about the $100 million is crazy?
I don't think it's crazy. No, not at all.
Okay.
Nope.
That's why I think they did it. And everything else I think is bullcrap. I think they did it because Amy would not give them the money to truly be able to trade out of that pick and pay a quarterback. That's my theory. All right, phones on this. A lot of people want to weigh in. 615-737-1025. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
what we've seen over the last 5 years, but especially this year, everyone seems to be drafting players, the same players. So it's like going to a restaurant with 20 of your best friends, and there's 20 things on the menu, but all 20 of you are ordering one of the same 3 entrees, right? You're all getting the steak and you're all getting the pasta. Maybe a few guys are getting the crab cakes, but nobody's going after the vegetarian option, right? And nobody's getting the lamb. Everybody's eating the same things. That's kind of what the draft has become in some ways. And I don't know if that's because of the incredible media coverage, all the so-called draft experts, right? All the people that are putting up mock drafts and consensus boards and things like that. But for me, the idea of having more picks means I have the chance of getting more players.
That was Eric DaCosta, the Ravens general manager, again, citing the loser's curse, which is a Penn study that says, don't worry about, oh, man, we love this guy, but he's going to go at 17 and we're at 19, so let's do whatever it takes to get to 16. Don't worry about that. You're all picking the same-ish caliber players. Don't worry about it. And the Titans essentially spitting in the face of it. So, again, my theory is Chad Brinker probably would want to trade back with the Giants and sign a quarterback and build the team that way, but it would cost $100 million more in signing bonus money, and Amy's not interested in that. That's my theory. One texter says, and our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunting.com says, this is dumb. Why keep talking about this? We've got Cam Ward. Let's move forward. They want to do it because, in all caps, because they like the quarterback. Do they? Like, again, they'll say how much they love Cam Ward, but if you're Brian Callahan, don't you look at Cam Ward as your get-out-of-jail-free card? I'm on the hot seat. I'm lucky to have kept my job. And if Mason Rudolph is my quarterback or Will Levis is my quarterback or whomever is, I'm getting fired. Brandon Allen. So, hey, you don't turn down a Cam Ward because I can win 7 games with Cam Ward at quarterback and keep my job. I can't win 7 games with Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers and keep my job, but I can with Cam Ward. Again, everything Brinker stands for, AI, business school, analytics, we've done it. We took the business school study. We asked AI to break down the analytics for us, and analytics says that it would be, AI says that it would be, the trade with the Giants would be 24.5 units compared to 10 units of drafting Cam Ward. Again, if Brinker stands for those things, then that would be his line of thought. Not, oh, man, I love this quarterback, and there's just nothing I can do except for take the quarterback. Adam in Portland says, what you said makes a lot of sense, but I don't think the Titans put that much thought into it. They just looked around and said nobody's buying jerseys because no one likes anyone on this team and panicked. They needed someone fans could rally behind, so they grabbed the biggest name they could get. It wasn't strategy, it was desperation. Nobody's lining up to buy a Jeffrey Simmons jersey. Most people are sick of him. Here's the deal when it comes to Sam Darnold, because I know you guys think he sucks. If they had signed him, you'd be buying Sam Darnold jerseys. And I know this because this time last year, you all were talking about Will Levis as a franchise quarterback. You guys were buying Will Levis jerseys. It's hilarious to me because last night I was just kind of screwing around and I did a search for a tweet from a year ago at training camp when Levis was god-awful against the Seahawks, and the amount of people that were just taking up for Levis. You would think that you guys, you people on Twitter, were related to him. And that's my Poo-Poo Johnson theory, which is the Titans could sign Poo-Poo Johnson, and you all would tell me about how great Poo-Poo was at Rear End State. If they had signed Darnold, you all would change your tune. The distinguished gentleman who thought Rand was the smartest guy in the world, let Rand cook, was a Shedeur Sanders over Cam Ward fan, is now telling me, I'll hold you accountable, Jared, when Cam Ward balls out, I'm holding you accountable. Your quarterback went in the 5th round. What are you talking about? Hold me accountable. One texter says, so if Amy is that cheap and won't pony up the money necessary to make the team competitive, what options do the Titans have and their fans to boycott the team and hope she sells it? Very frustrating to support a team that you know will not be competitive in the modern day NFL because it is about mitigating risk and making a profit. First of all, drafting a quarterback number 1 is not mitigating risk. That is embracing risk. But as far as making a profit, again, the math we did, and it's rough-ish math, but I think it gives you an idea, would have added $100 million total over the next 2 years to the payroll. And that's without adding another single free agent or trading for more draft picks or anything else. So that's $50 million per season. According to Spot Track, the Titans currently have a payroll of $239 million. So $50 million would put them at about 290, right? That would put you ahead of Jacksonville at 288, behind Chicago at 290. That's not too much to ask, is it? Miss Amy, can you pay as much as Jacksonville pays for their team? Thank you. Because if you want to beat Jacksonville, they're willing to pay. Carson says, Amy Adams Strunk reminds me of a narcissist. I disagree with that, by the way, but I'll continue to read the tweet or the text. Hires the crew to get the job done, but doesn't want to spend the money that she inherited to be good. If they were good, it would bring her more money if that's what she truly cares about. So I believe what happened was Robinson, Vrabel, and Amy all isolated themselves from each other and all started thinking that their poo didn't smell. And they all stuck their heads up their tushies, and they should have not done that. All of them, including her, including J-Rob, including Vrabel. And I believe that's why you're where you are now. Amy wanted to hire her general manager and her coach and her quarterback, and it went to crap because she doesn't know what she's doing. But I don't think she's a narcissist. I think that might be a little over the top. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back into your phones. Plus, Bruce Arians penned a column for The Athletic about why young quarterbacks fail. But there was one thing about this story that I just could not get over. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. And you know how I love my former coaches, former general managers, especially ones that have had success in the NFL. I think they have an idea for the most part of what they're talking about. To a certain extent, there are some guys that I'm like, I don't know. But for the most part, I think we can agree that I like those guys. So Bruce Arians penned a column in The Athletic, of all places, about why so many young quarterbacks fail. And he centered the entire story around his experience with Andrew Luck. Quote, I remember, I was almost doing a Bruce Arians impersonation there. I remember the exact moment I knew Andrew Luck had the makeup to be successful. I'm not talking about talent. Everyone knew he had the talent. I'm talking about makeup. The mental side of the game that you can't measure on film or at the combine. I was the offensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts at the time. I flew up to Stanford to work Andrew out ahead of the draft. Andrew was the best player in the draft, but I wanted to see what he was made of. So we put in some plays, ran them out on the field, and then came back to a meeting room to talk. I said to him, okay, put 62 wide choice up on the board. It was a play that we had just put in earlier that day. Andrew started diagramming the play and breaking it down. Then I cut him off. That's not what I said. Andrew didn't hesitate a beat, man. He fired right back. That's exactly what you said. And it was right. He was right. I chuckled and said, okay, man, you got me. I'm trying to check you out. I just wanted to test him. He just wanted to test him. To see if he had the fortitude to know he was right and to stick up for himself. He put a fork in that real quick. I knew then, when the tough times come, and they always do for young quarterbacks, he could handle it. It wouldn't crumble him. And after all my years in the NFL, I think that's the number one indicator of whether players in general and quarterbacks in particular will succeed or fail. How they handle failure. And I did read that, and I did think of Cam Ward. And I did think of the story. We all know it. 0-star recruit goes to Incarnate Word, goes from Incarnate Word to Washington State, goes from Washington State when he's told he's not really all that good enough for the NFL to Miami, and now he's the number one pick. See, Jared? But there was one thing about that story that Bruce Arians told, that Bruce Arians wrote, that I just couldn't get over. And I'm not doing what a lot of you do, which is when you disagree with something you hear, you say, oh, that guy sucks. Oh, that guy, he doesn't count. He sucks. Forget about him. He doesn't count. Bill Polian sucks. I'm not doing that. What I can't get over, and I'm not saying I know more than Bruce Arians or that Bruce Arians is wrong, but can't we say that the Colts ruined Andrew Luck simply because of their own ineptitude? And that the big fear, for me especially, I don't know about you all, but the big fear for me is that the Titans will ruin Cam Ward. When Andrew Luck came out, he was the surest prospect of my lifetime. He was more sure of a thing than Peyton Manning. He was more sure than Trevor Lawrence would later be. The only prospect in his stratosphere was John Elway, who was drafted in 1983, and I was born in 1989. And both Manning and Lawrence were considered slam dunks. But Luck was viewed in a class higher than them. Floyd told me that when he evaluated Andrew Luck coming out of Stanford, he was convinced that Andrew Luck was going to set every NFL record at the quarterback position. And again, this is Floyd we're talking about here, not a guy who just says things like that to say them. Andrew Luck won 53 games as a starter. But that's it. He won, again, let me say this, 53 games as an NFL starting quarterback. When you're supposed to be John Elway, isn't that failing? Ryan Tannehill was in the same draft class. And Ryan Tannehill won 81 games. And I think we can all agree, Ryan Tannehill was not the prospect and did not have the talent that Andrew Luck had. And yet he still won 20 more games. Andrew Luck won 4 playoff games. That's the same as Brock Purdy if Brock Purdy never played another snap. The fact that Andrew Luck had all that talent and that great makeup that Bruce Arians is talking about, that Andrew Luck had the resiliency, and that Andrew Luck was that smart, and yet his incompetent organization still ruined him to where they only got 6 seasons out of a slam dunk generational talent, which ended because he lost all desire to play football. Tells me that organizations do matter when it comes to developing the quarterback, no matter who the quarterback is. Now, I've said Joe Burrow and Peyton Manning are the only 2 quarterbacks I've seen who can take inept organizations and make them great. So maybe Manning and Burrow are the exception here. Trevor Lawrence has not taken the inept Jacksonville Jaguars and made them great. And what did Jacksonville do on the first night of the draft? Mortgage the future for Travis Hunter. So, when I hear Bruce Arians talk about why quarterbacks fail, and he says that when the tough times come, and they always do for young quarterbacks, Andrew Luck could handle it, it wouldn't crumble him. I argue, didn't it crumble him? Like, isn't that what happened? It literally crumbled him. Bad offensive line play, year after year after year. Massive injuries for Andrew Luck. And again, the guy lost his desire to play football. They got less wins out of him than Ryan Tannehill, and as many wins in the playoffs as Mr. Irrelevant. This was a guy who, once again, was supposed to break every record there was, and yet his team broke him. So if that great resilient quarterback can get broken, why are we all convinced the Titans, a bad organization that has ruined quarterbacks like Mariota, like Vince Young, maybe Levis, why are we so convinced the Titans won't ruin him? 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. And it's funny, the distinguished gentleman on the YouTube chat, Cam poses all of those traits and you're spewing. The mental fortitude is there. Yeah, Andrew Luck had them too, and they broke him. Explain that one to me. Stillman and Company, we continue. 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
We considered all things available to us. As far as when and where and how much, that doesn't really matter now at this point. But those conversations, those offers, we did our due diligence, and ultimately we just felt like Cam is a player that we weren't going to let go anywhere else except here to Tennessee. So we arrived at that consensus. It took a lot of work to get there, and I don't think at any point since we made that decision, there's really wasn't any conversations past that. I said it before that I think when you have an opportunity to add a caliber of quarterback like Cam, those things are priceless. There's no price you put on that from draft capital standpoint, because those players end up being what you think they're capable of. Those picks don't matter when it comes to future picks and draft capital, because he's got the ability to be a really fantastic quarterback.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan. So I try to be as on top of what people say as one can be when it comes to what they're saying about the Titans, what they're saying about Cam Ward, what they're saying around the NFL, what they're saying NHL as far as the hockey stuff's concerned. I try to be as tied in as you can, but sometimes you can't hear everything. Even PK, who I would argue is my biggest detractor, Reed, even PK says he is amazed at how I have the time to hear and listen to all the things that I hear and listen to, which takes me to this. Wes and Hermitage texts in. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com and says, before I ask you this, let me just say he was absolutely awful and needed to go. But how does it make you feel knowing that Rand Carthon would have taken the trade and moved back? Hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on. Did Rand Carthon say he would have made that trade with the Giants? And where did Rand Carthon say this? Reed, are we aware that Rand Carthon said that he would make the Giants trade? Is this the first time hearing of this?
This is my first time hearing of it. And also add to that, when did he say this?
I mean, I'm stunned. If Rand Carthon, now he did take over for Rick Spielman with the First Pick podcast, which used to be very much in my rotation, especially around draft time. And I did not listen to it because, in all seriousness, I cannot do Rand talking about what the Raiders should do at 6. I cannot take Rand seriously. But
if we're going with the name of the podcast, there's no one who knows how to get you a first-round pick, the first overall pick, than Rand Carthon.
Yeah, it shouldn't be with the first pick. He won't get to make that, but to get you the first pick. But again, I need to know, did Rand Carthon actually say he would have made the trade with the Giants and moved back? I need the context of this, because it's not going to change my opinion on Rand Carthon, but it would have been the right thing to do. And far too often in his tenure as general manager, he did the exact opposite of the right thing to do. Scotty from Dixon says the Titans ruin every young star quarterback since McNair. The only quarterbacks that have had any success in Tennessee are the veterans who have the experience like Kerry Collins or Ryan Tannehill. No young quarterback has come out of the draft and been successful in the Titans organization since Steve McNair. Just so happy that I'm not a Titan fan. Go Niners, says Scotty. Let me say this. I've been a big believer for years and years and years that just because it didn't work out with Vince Young doesn't mean it's not going to work out with Cam Ward, simply because every single person involved is no longer here. Bud Adams, may he rest in peace. Steve Underwood, retired. Jeff Fisher, Floyd Reese, not running the organization anymore. Norm Chow, who the hell knows? And better, who the hell cares? All of them are gone. Not one of those people is involved in any capacity with the development of Cam Ward. But I do think the things that are required in order for an organization to remove its head from its rear end and develop young quarterbacks, I do feel like the Titans are lacking. And I think the biggest thing the Titans are lacking is they lack a legitimate plan that has any seriousness rooted in it. They lack experience in the key decision-making spots. And then they lack the patience to actually run a plan. So on one hand, I agree. I would have loved to see if Marcus Mariota didn't have a moron head coach in Ken Wisenhunt when he took over. I would have loved to see Marcus Mariota if they didn't constantly change the offensive coordinator play caller on it. Constantly change the head coach on him. I would have loved it. Let's see if he would have done it. I don't know if he would have done it or not. You know, Vince Young, he was a freaking superstar that first year. And everybody says Vince was lazy or Vince sucked or Vince couldn't throw or Vince couldn't. But Vince was what, 32-19 as a starter? He got benched, came back as a starter, and made the Pro Bowl. If the Titans had built an offense around him the way the Ravens built an offense around Lamar Jackson, would Vince Young have had a ton of success? And I'd like to think the answer is yes. But again, I don't know. One texter says, I'm of the belief and a lot closer to believing that Rand Carthon would have drafted Shedeur Sanders. Now, that would have been something. Again, here's the crazy thing about the draft, too. Shedeur Sanders didn't get drafted. And people around the league were asked about it, and all these general managers were sitting up there, and they were like, yeah, I'm shocked by it because I think he's pretty good. And it's yet, I think he's pretty good for you. Not for me. I'm not interested in him, but for you. And all it would have taken is one of these general managers or one of these coaches to just be in love with Shedeur Sanders, and it would have changed everybody's opinion. If Shedeur Sanders goes number 6 overall, have you noticed, by the way, we have not heard a peep out of Shedeur or Dion since the fall, since the 5th round, which is the way it should be. We have not heard one peep out of them. But if Shedeur had gone 6th overall, I mean, they would have had the legendary party, and they would have been, I mean, Dion be front and center. And again, it's just one person's opinion. But they're very easily, I'm not going to rule it out that Rand would have drafted Sanders. I believe, and I want to make sure I'm correct in this, which is actually pretty funny in hindsight now, Buck reported at the end of the year that the Titans front office didn't like the quarterbacks in the draft. And I remember because Paul got all mad saying, how can they know the process? And TD came out and said, that's not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is they like Shedeur Sanders. Well, they obviously drafted Cam Ward, and Brinker was there, so I don't know. But when it comes to TD's reporting of it, and he says, like, you know, they're not saying they don't like him, but from what I've heard, they like saying, I do wonder if that's Rand. But I don't know. Again, somebody tell it. Did Rand say he would have made the trade? I can't assume what Rand would have done. I can only say what Rand says he would have done. One text says, it's ironic how both of the national teams are in the same boat. It's the owners or the city that's jinxed. Well, I think it's the opposite ends of the spectrum. I think that the Titans are too impatient, too reactive, and the Predators are too patient and too loyal. And again, they need to be like Goldilocks. Mama Bear's bed is too soft. Papa Bear's bed is too hard. But Baby Bear's bed is just right. The Titans are too crazy. They're too reactive. They are too inexperienced. And the Predators are too loyal, too patient, too our way. Right in the middle. Just right. Trevor joins us next here on the program. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I got to tell you about my guys at Hiller. They are fabulous. And I know the summer is coming, which means ACs are going to be cranked. And you do not want to have to take time out of your summer to deal with a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical emergency. Most of the time, when you have one of those, you do not know what it will cost, if it will get fixed correctly, or if someone is just trying to sell you something that you absolutely do not need. When you call Hiller, and I use Hiller at my home, and I absolutely love them. When you call Hiller, their experts are going to solve your problems, and they're going to solve them quickly. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, where the price you're told is the price you will actually pay with no hidden fees and no surprises on your bill. Book online now by visiting happyhiller.com. That's what I do, is I go right to happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
an important study called The Loser's Curse by Richard Thaler, who's a economist, and Cade Massey, who's a professor at Penn now. And the idea of it basically is that teams simply don't do any better drafting than anyone else. You're all going to be about the same, right? So the idea that you're going to trade up, and basically that the draft is inherently sort of a luck-driven process. Now, I don't believe that, but there is an element of luck involved. So if you think about that, and if you accept that premise, then you're trading up for a player that you think is better than anyone else, right? And you think that team's going to draft him,
right?
But most of the time, they're not going to draft that player. And so what we've seen over the years is that player is probably going to fall to you. Could he be selected? Yes, but there's no guarantees that player is going to be better than the player that you end up getting.
Yeah.
So they call it the loser's curse because the team at the top, it's like, oh, he's got the first pick in the draft. Well, you know what? The player that they select, we've seen this many times. There's no guarantees that player is going to be better than the player that gets selected at 25 or 30 in the first round. And so all things being equal, I know I'm doing a lot of talking about this, but it's a passion of mine. All things being equal, right? The fact that no one really knows who's going to be better than anyone else, the only rational approach is to get more at-bats,
right?
Is to pick more.
That's Eric DaCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, referencing the loser's curse. Again, a study out of the Wharton School of Business, which, according to ChatGPT, says basically NFL teams tend to overvalue early draft picks despite high expectations associated with the top picks. And the research suggests that cognitive biases such as overconfidence and the allure of potential star players influence teams to make suboptimal decisions, deviating from what would be expected in a rational, efficient market. According to the Loser's Curse study, ChatGPT putting in the reported offer for Cam Ward, the Giants offered 2 1s and 2 2s. The Loser's Curse says, bottom line, yes, the Titans should have accepted that offer. They passed on a value maximizing move to pursue a high variance outcome consistent with the loser's curse decision-making trap. The expected breakdown is Cam Ward represents 10 units of value, whereas the trade with the Giants would have entered 24.5 units, a net gain of 14.5 units. Conclusion, according to ChatGPT, the Titans could have more than doubled their expected surplus value by accepting the Giants' offer, a classic case of avoiding the loser's curse by trading down. Trevor Manich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, do you agree with, again, I just had ChatGPT summarize a giant study done by the Wharton School of Business and an economist and a professor. And I took, what was probably a 30-page document and told ChatGPT, summarize it for me. And then I threw in the offer for Cam Ward. Trevor, do you agree with the sentiment of the study that was done that you're better off taking more swings at the plate and more picks than you are picking very high in a draft?
Generally, yes. And Jared, I agree with you that based on the information we had of what the Giants' offer was alleged to have been on draft night when we were doing the radio show from Twin Peaks, that the Titans would have been better off to take that deal. And I agree with it. Now we're hearing that we're talking about 2 first-rounders, number 3 this year, so they swapped first-round picks with the Giants, plus the second pick in the second round this year, plus a first-round pick and a second-round pick next year. So you've got Cam Ward, who has to be better than 4 guys. And this year in those places, number 3, the Giants that they would have traded to the Titans was Abdul Carter, the pass rusher out of Penn State. And then their high second-round pick, which they traded away, but in that spot was Jaden Higgins, who's a huge, fast, downfield threat receiver out of Iowa State. And then they've got 2 guys next year, and Cam Ward has to have more impact than those 2 guys that were drafted this year, and a relatively high, I expect, first and second round pick next year. And he has to stay healthy. And remember that from a pure statistical standpoint, quarterbacks taken in the first round are a coin flip. They're about a 50-50 chance that they'll be successful with the team that drafted them. So you lose 4 guys highly drafted for 1 guy that's a coin flip. Now, the only reason that makes sense is if you are fully convinced that 1 guy, in this case Cam Ward, the quarterback, is fully worth the potential of those other 4 draft picks. So the Titans would have had to have believed that, or they would have had to have taken Cam Ward for a different reason other than he was better than the offer that was presented to them.
Yeah. I do wonder, Trevor, I was reading a story today that Atlanta loved James Pierce Jr. They were thinking all day that was who they were going to take. And then when Jalen Walker didn't get drafted, they said, oh my God, they took him 15 and then traded next year's first rounder to move back into the first round this year. And they traded their second rounder to get a third rounder back, but in order to take James Pierce. And I do wonder, Trevor, in a lot of those instances, when it comes to a team just loving a guy, do you believe in that? Or do you think, no, you need to protect yourself and not give up next year's one because you're obsessed with James Pierce?
Well, if you love a guy, you better be confident that he's going to be the guy that you love, the one that's in your heart and in your head projecting. Because if you're wrong about that and you could have added or kept draft capital, then that has a big effect. When it comes down to who works out and who doesn't, I was drafted 20th. I was the last pick in the first round the year I came out. And by all means, there were a whole lot of guys in that draft that were better football players than I was and had better careers than I did. But there were guys that only played for a couple of years, drafted ahead of me in the first round. There were guys that didn't play at all because of legal issues and other things that happened. They didn't even see the field. And you never know who those guys are going to be at the time that you draft them. You think you know, but you really don't. And the more swings you have, the more chance that bat is going to connect with that ball. Now, having said that, when you draft high, you have a chance to get a potential 10-year difference maker. And as the draft kind of fades down the first round, that kind of elite talent kind of gets homogenized into a whole bunch of guys that are not too different. And in this draft, probably the first 6 or 7 guys or so were guys that you could say, okay, I can count on this guy to be a difference maker for me for 10 years. After that, in this draft, you had a whole bunch of guys that were graded fairly closely by most draft boards, certainly by the NFL. And so, the Titans may have thought that if we go down too far, we lose a chance to get a generational difference-making talent. And this is where, we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. If they think that Cam Ward really is that difference-making talent, then okay, then they did the right thing by drafting him. However, Cam Ward's going to have to show, and this is not his fault, but he's going to have to show that he is that difference-making talent, because you and I have talked about other reasons that the Titans may have had ulterior motives to take Cam Ward at number 1, besides the idea that they think he was the best player in the draft and the best player for them. One of them is to create fan excitement to sell tickets to the new stadium. If they fix Cam Ward at that spot, whether or not he works out, it will have been a monumental self-owned mistake. I don't know if they did that, but these are the what-ifs involved here. And a lot of people are saying that Cam Ward was not the best pick in this draft, and Cam Ward was not worth all the picks that the Giants offered, apparently, the Titans to be able to move up to number 1. And I agree with you on that. I think they would have been better off at this stage in the progress of this franchise to take 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s, if that indeed was the offer.
Trevor, you're a football guy through and through. So when you hear a study like that, and the Ravens general manager, Eric DeCosta, says, hey, we really subscribe to this theory, how much weight do you put into that? Because, again, I know you went to BYU. I think you're very smart, but you and I are not Wharton business school guys. We're not analytic gurus. We're not. I mean, I think Lamar Jackson probably passed a higher math class than I did at Louisville. And yet I think that there's some serious weight to this. How much do you buy it?
I think it's a good basis to build from, but I don't think it's an end-all be-all. The computer says this, so you do this. The reason is that, the feel for a player that old school coaches have is a real thing. Analytics might say that you should go for it on 4th and 1 right now, but the coach might look into his players' eyes and realize that the players don't believe that they can get that 1 yard. The defensive line is whipping the offensive line. The quarterback is a little dazed. The running back is limping on a bad ankle. And the analytics say, no, you go for it right now on 4th and 1 in this situation. And the coach says, no, not right now. And opposite of that is where the analytics say, don't do something. Don't fake a punch here. Don't go for it on 4th down. Don't kick the field goal here. Go for it. Those kinds of things, because he looks in his players' eyes and he sees that the players are believing it and they're feeling it and they've got the opponents on their heels and now's the right time. BYU's head coach, Kalani Sitake, was a master of that and has been. He goes for it on 4th down and fake punts deep in his own territory and all that more than anybody I've seen in college football, it seems. And sometimes it doesn't work, but more often than not, it does. And he does it on a feeling for what's happening on the field. And mathematics coming out of a computer are a good place to start with a recommendation, but I wouldn't always say that is sacrosanct, that it should overrule what the coach who works with the individuals who are flawed human beings who have ups and downs and ebbs and flows thinks.
Trevor Maddich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Coming up next, rookie minicamp for Cam Ward. What does where does Cam need to be in all of this? Plus, what does Trev need to see before he would put Cam Ward in as the starting quarterback of the Titans? We'll get to that next. I'm going to Company 102.5 The Game. Be sure to tune into Sounds Baseball tonight on 94.9 The Fan as the Sounds take on Norfolk. Pre-game begins at 6:20. The first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and by Family Leisure. Trevor Maddich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, Titans rookie minicamp is this week. Let's start there. If you were out on the field at rookie minicamp and you were analyzing Cam Ward, what in particular would you be looking at and trying to say, okay, he's either got it or he doesn't? At this point in time, what would you be looking for?
Well, first of all, the operation. I mean, he needs to get people in and out of the huddle and into the right formations and all those things. But that's sort of a basic fundamental. First thing I want him to do is protect the ball, because Will Levis had so many epic turnovers last year during games and really struggled during the off-season and preseason camps against his own defense, that if Cam Ward tries to show everybody what an amazing arm he has and ends up throwing it to his own defense in practice too much, there will be a healthy degree of institutional here we go againism. And he needs to show he can protect the ball. He needs to show he can protect himself. And really, in order to be the starter on day one, if he can't protect himself, he shouldn't start. And that means he needs to get into the right play, see the defense pre-snap and check out of bad plays and into a good play. He needs to be able to check the right protection based on what he sees pre-snap on the defense. And he needs to know where his answers are. In other words, if things break down and pressure's coming, he needs to know right now where his outlets are and which outlets are likely to be open based on what the coverage is. So those are the things I want to see from him first. Show that you can protect the ball. Show that you can run the operation after the snap in a way that you can protect yourself when games start to roll around. And then play within the timing of plays. I know that Cam Ward can run around and make people miss at times as he scrambles for time and makes a great throw sidearm around the last guy who's pressuring him, as he's throwing the ball. I know he can do that. That's mildly interesting. I want to see from him at a time like this that he can read the defense pre-snap, and then after the snap, read what the disguise was as it rolls into the actual coverage, get to the back of the drop and throw the ball on time to his first or second or third progression, third receiver. So I want to see him run the plays on time, on schedule, to the right people with the right footwork, because that all is also part of protecting himself, because if the ball doesn't come out on time, now you're exposed to getting smashed.
Trevor, I put a list together of what I would need to see from Cam Ward before I would feel comfortable about putting him out there. Brian Callahan said it's going to be an open competition between Brandon Allen, Will Levis, Tim Boyle, and Cam Ward. I mean, look, Cam's probably the best of that group right now, but I'm not putting Cam out there before he's ready. If I'm the coach and I'm the general manager, Titan fans don't want to hear that. They want to see Cam right now. So I ask you this. If you own the team and you were the general manager and you were the coach, so you're not going to get fired and you're doing what's in the best interest of the team, what would you need to see from Cam Ward before, in practice, in preseason games, before you'd stick him out there as the starting quarterback? Or would you just let him get his teeth kicked in on the job no matter what?
I would not let him get his teeth kicked in no matter what, because doing that will force him into bad habits that he will have to then unlearn before he can then reestablish good habits down the road. I mean, a young quarterback who doesn't recognize what he sees in the short time after the snap that he has to recognize it and get the ball out will all of a sudden start to look at the pass rush and figure out a place that he can go that might be safe so he can look around as he's scrambling. I mean, these are all really bad habits. The first thing I would want to know is, does the team believe in him? Does the offense believe that he should be the guy? Because if the offense thinks that Will Levis, for example, should be the starter because Levis made a huge jump from last year to this year and that Cam is not ready yet, then if they start Cam and Cam does what Will Levis did early last year, which is to say inexplicably horrible decisions that led to completely unnecessary turnovers that cost them games over and over again, then you can't start Cam because it will de-edify the head coach. And the truth is that when you've got a young quarterback like Will Levis, last year, you've got to give him some time to be able to develop it. You just sort of eat some of the mistakes. But there came a time early in the season when, if I'm in that locker room, I'm thinking, Coach, if you're going to let this guy make these kinds of mistakes, not normal mistakes, but these kinds of ridiculous, poor decision mistakes over and over again, and you're going to let him play, why am I working so hard? Because you're not even trying to win games then, right? And I think that hurt his credibility with the team early on. And I don't think he can afford, this is the coach now, Brian Callahan, I don't think he can afford to do that again with Cam Ward. The team needs to believe in Cam Ward and needs to believe that Cam Ward has earned the right to play in order for Callahan to start him, right? And then, you need to see things like he needs to be able to move the ball, move the team. He needs to have a good enough understanding of the slice of the offense that he will have to master in order to be able to go in there at first. And then they add more slices as the season goes on. He'll need to show a mastery of those. But ultimately, it comes down to being able to do that in a very short period of time, within the first second or second and a half after the snap. Because if it takes him 2.5 seconds to figure out what's going on after the snap, it's too late and he can't play.
Am I wrong for thinking that playing him before he's ready too early is like toothpaste going out of the tube? Whereas if I'm more cautious and he plays 6 games in, or he sits the bench for half the season and Brandon Allen starts, I don't really lose anything. Am I wrong for viewing it like that?
No, I think you're right. I would come to the same conclusion from a different angle, and that is they didn't draft Cam Ward to win in 2025. They drafted Cam Ward to be their franchise quarterback for the next decade. And so putting him out there before he's ready will not just, force him into bad habits. It will also shatter his confidence because he's the starter. He fails. He starts the next game. He fails. He starts the next game. He fails, and then he's benched. Is that how you really want him to start his decade as the franchise quarterback with you? So if you're not sure that the team believes in him, if you're not sure that he can protect himself and operate the offense, even if he's not the best quarterback, but if he can protect himself, operate the offense, and the defense, the offense, the rest of the team believes in him, then you can put him out there and let him develop. But and if you don't, then start somebody else and let him go in the second quarter and run a series or two, and then come in. And once he shows he is good enough to handle the smaller packages for smaller bits of time, then you start to work him in. That way you don't risk throwing him out there too early and forcing yourself to bench him for the good of the rest of the team. That's the worst case scenario.
Trevor, I'm going to put you on the spot. Your colleague at ESPN, Jordan Reed, had his way too early mock draft and had 4 quarterbacks going inside the top 10. Cade Klubnik from Clemson, Drew Aller from Penn State, Lenora Sellers from South Carolina, and Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. So I'm going to ask you this. Where would you put Cam Ward in that group with Klubnik, Aller, Sellers, and Nussmeier?
I think I would put him at third. I'd put Sellers of South Carolina first. And if he continues his trajectory, he very well could be a top 5 pick, if not the first pick in the draft. He's shown the ability and the talent to potentially be a superstar. Nussmeier is an NFL team's dream because he sees things from an NFL quarterback's perspective. He comes from an NFL quarterback family, and he's got a lot of years in college football to be able to operate within a system and distribute the ball NFL players would want to distribute. I think both of those guys, Sellers would have everything that Cam Ward has from an arm standpoint, but better ability to run. Nussmeier would come in more ready to operate an NFL offense efficiently and correctly. So therefore, I would put Cam Ward at number 3.
Interesting. Trevor Maddich, as always, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, where experience matters. Trevor, great stuff. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man.
Yep, Trevor Maddich on our program. The lottery night from hell for the Nashville Predators, the year of hell for the Nashville Predators, came to fruition last night with the 5th overall pick, the worst it could have been. And yet, I do think there's a way Barry Trotz may try to make the best of a bad situation. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee, and I'm not going to lie to you. My heart, it didn't break a little bit. I expected the Predators were going to be picking 4th or 5th. I said, look, I will pee my pants with joy if the Predators land the 1st or 2nd pick. I will be okay with number 3. I'll be sad if it's number 4, but I'll be okay with it. And if they end up picking 5th, it'll be an unmitigated disaster. And they landed on number 5. Again, I can't say I'm surprised. But I actually think Barry Trotz has the ability to do something he's wanted to do for a couple of years. And this would, in theory, make the best of a bad situation. Again, as I have said, if you want to win the cup in the NHL, you have to pick 1st or 2nd. Unless you're the 2019 St. Louis Blues, the exception to all rules, you have to have a top of the draft guy. How did the Florida Panthers get Alexander Barkov? They took him 2nd overall. How did the Colorado Avalanche get Nathan McKinnon? They took him 1st overall. Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay, 1st overall. Sidney Crosby, Alexander Ovechkin, 1st overall. Connor McDavid, 1st overall. So you have to get that guy. And in this draft, there's 2 guys. There's Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman out of Canada, who I believe the Predators would have loved to have taken at number 2, and Michael Misa, the center out of Canada, who I believe if the Predators had landed the 1st overall pick, that's who they would have taken. New York got the number 1 pick. The Islanders have the number 1 pick against all odds. We saw the ping pong balls. They're going to take Schaefer, which now takes us to how Barry Trotz makes the best of a bad situation. For 2 years, 2 drafts as general manager, pick on pick on pick, Barry Trotz has tried to move into the top 4. And for 2 years, Barry Trotz has absolutely been rebuffed. At Bridgestone Arena on the night of the draft in 2023, Barry Trotz offered San Jose a reported 4 number 1 draft choices to move up to number 4 to draft Will Smith, who may end up being a 2nd liner. Well, this year, maybe he's got a shot. And maybe he's got a shot for one specific spot for one specific player. And that is number 2 overall with San Jose for Michael Misa. Scott Wheeler at The Athletic says, watch out for trades this year, and this gives me some hope. Quote, every year when I do Q&As and mailbags around this time, Wheeler writes, I get asked just as much about potential trades as I do the actual players. And if you've followed my work, you'll know that almost always my answers are a letdown. It's hard to make trades on draft day, especially in the 1st round. Top picks almost never get moved. Trade ups and trade downs are almost always, he writes, in small increments. But this year does feel like it's more ripe for action, Wheeler writes, for a couple of reasons. For starters, the belief among teams I've talked to is that it's going to be easier to make trades happen in a decentralized format where there aren't prying eyes and listening ears. The guys like doing their business over the phone. So the NHL this year is going to a decentralized draft. Again, think of the NFL. So they're all going to be at Bridgestone Arena, even though the draft is going to be in Los Angeles. It used to be where everybody was seated on the draft floor, like some sort of awkward wedding every year, kind of like an NHL convention. That's over. So they'll all be at Bridgestone Arena. So that's one of them. But Wheeler continues, there's also a higher concentration of picks amongst a group of teams. And that always makes managers more inclined to take risks and be spicy with their picks and, yes, package them. 7 teams have multiple 1st-round picks this year. San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Philly, Columbus, Montreal, and Calgary. The Sharks, Blackhawks, Predators, and Flyers also have the first 4 picks of the 2nd round on top of that. The Flyers have 7 picks in the first 3 rounds. The Blackhawks, Preds, and Sharks and Canadians have 2 second-rounders as well. Now, he says watch out for the Blackhawks, Flyers, and Habs in particular, because Chicago GM Kyle Davidson has too much quantity in his pool and has already shown a willingness to package picks to move up. The Flyers, blah, 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 whatever. Let me just say this. I would not be shocked if Barry Trotz tries to go all in to get to number 2 to take Michael Misa. You know, Barry Trotz talked about when he took the job that he's told the scouts, I want to take big swings. That means take big risks. And everybody likes to say, oh, it's easy to take big risks. But when you take the risk of signing a bunch of veteran players to massive contracts and it doesn't work out, people aren't very happy about it. That's what happens when you take big risks. John Robinson took a big risk in Caleb Farley. People weren't very happy about that. So Barry has said, I want to take big swings. To me, the big swing is if Matthew Schaefer goes number 1, that Trotz then does what it takes to get to number 2, to get the better center prospect in Michael Misa. There will be a center available at number 5. Last year, wherever the Predators were picking, there were no center prospects available. I kept looking at it saying, wow, like they're down to center 8, who profiles as maybe a second or third line guy. But all the good ones, and I'm not even talking about Celebrini, but I'm talking about everybody. They're all gone. That's not the case. If you are able to move up to number 2 to take Michael Misa. But this is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the swing becomes big. Because here's what it probably takes in order to get San Jose to make the move down. Number 1, I think San Jose is obviously going to want the 5th overall pick. And you're obviously going to be willing to give it. Number 2, they're going to want Tanner Mullendijk. He's your top defensive prospect. He's one of the better defensive prospects. Certainly not one of the best defensive prospects in the game, but he's probably one of the better defensive prospects in the game. And they need blue line help. Like the reason they're so upset they didn't get the number 1 pick is they wanted Matthew Schaefer. They're not going to get him. So what you do is you give them Mullendijk. They move back to 5. They can take the second best defenseman off the board. And now they've got 2 blue line prospects to go with Celebrini and Will Smith. 3, they're going to want another first-round pick. My guess would be Tampa Bay's first this year is what you could probably trade them. They probably aren't going to take the Vegas first, which originally belonged to them. They're not going to take that. And they're going to really want your first next year. But I could see, again, let's meet in the middle. They take Tampa's first rounder. So that's Mullendijk, the 5th overall pick, and Tampa's first. That's not all. There's more you're going to need in the Showcase Showdown. Now, I don't know what that's going to be because I don't know their organization well enough. I don't know their roster well enough. It would not surprise me if they would have interest in a veteran guy like, say, Lazan, for instance, that they would have some interest in because, well, he's a veteran blue liner and he's got cost control and we're trying to win a little bit, develop young kids, that kind of thing. Or if they'd look at you and say, no, we want Tampa Bay's first and we want next year's first and we want it unprotected. Now the question is, and you won't know this when you go to make this trade because you don't know who will get to number 5. But is that worth the difference between Misa and James Higgins, who may be there at number 5, the kid out of Boston College? Is that the difference between Misa and Ryan McQueen, who's 6'5" and got hurt and could be the number 1 pick in this draft or number 3 pick in this draft or whatever before he got hurt, etc.? I don't know the answer to that. I just know Barry Trotz has tried for years, especially with San Jose, to move up in the draft. And at each instance he's been rebuffed. This might be the year that it actually works. And I'm just going to give you my opinion. I think Misa's worth it. I think Misa is worth it, even though some people are going to like this Caleb Denoyer, whatever his last name is. They're going to like him. They're going to like Higgins. You know, you're going to get one of the 3 centers, Higgins, Denoyer, or McQueen will be there at number 5. There's another O'Brien kid that people apparently are starting to like. He could be there at number 5. But they're not Michael Misa. And again, if you want to win the cup, you got to have Michael Misa. So while it was bad last night, what happened to the Predators, it would not shock me if Barry Trotz did what it took to make a massive trade to move up to number 2 in a league that normally does not trade the second overall pick. It would not surprise me if he's able to pull it off, or at least tries his ass off this year to do it. 615-737-1025. I did hate the draft last night, or the lottery last night, but I did see something from the Athletic that 3 months ago I said I would have settled for out of court. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 1 or 2 after the game.
What does number 5 do for you? Where do you head from there?
Well, we're in the process of all the meetings right now upstairs. I sat in with our scouts today. I feel that even at the moving back a couple spots in number 5, we're going to get a good player. I don't have any doubt about that. What it might do, depending on once we get the order, we're probably going to put a couple of plans into place. I'll have to make some phone calls and follow through with some of our plans. So I think when we get through with all the process, we have the combine coming up, as well as some interviews with the players, especially what we think is probably the guys will be in probably the top 10 for sure. We'll do a lot of background checking, do all that, and once we get that in order, we'll try to figure out what everybody else is doing and have a few plans in place to go in the direction we need.
Okay, there you go. That was Barry Trotz. Now, for about the last 5 months, we've sat here talking about the Predator season, and this is why I'm glad I don't work for the team, because Willie can't go on the FanDuel Sports Network broadcast and say, well, Chris Mason, you know what? It'd be a good thing for them to lose today. You just can't say that. Remember when Barry would come on the show and he'd say, hey, I want us to win. I'm not going to tank, but... And I said there were 3 players, Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, and James Higgins, that I could live with if the Predators draft. So this morning, after that awful draft lottery last night, this morning I pulled up the Athletic and I saw they had a mock draft out there. I said, okay, let's see what the mock draft, now that they've said it, let's see. Number 1, Matthew Schaefer goes to the New York Islanders. Okay, that's not really a surprise. Number 2, Michael Misa goes to the San Jose Sharks. Again, not a surprise. Number 3, Chicago takes Porter Martone, that big right winger that scores a bunch of goals but's not a center. Their Scott Powers at The Athletic says that the reason being that the Blackhawks don't have a lot of forwards like Martone, but they've got the small center types like Connor Bedard. Utah at 4. They go with Caleb Denoyer, the center out of Moncton, which means the Predators on the clock at 5 take, according to this mock draft, Scott Wheeler, the Athletics prospect guru, James Higgins, the center out of Boston College. And I'm like, wait a minute. So does this mean if he gets to 5, does this mean that James Higgins isn't as good as we thought he was when I was saying there's 3 guys and the center out of BC or does this mean that luck might actually come the Predators' way after they got porked by luck last night in the lottery? Here's the one thing I'll say. The NHL Central Scouting Analysis ranks James Higgins the number 2 player in the draft behind Matthew Schaefer. Bob McKenzie at TSN, who's been doing this for 100 million years, has James Higgins at number 2 behind Matthew Schaefer and ahead of Michael Misa. Again, I don't want to get too caught up in what a mock draft says, but it sounds like a lot of these teams, especially Chicago ahead of you, they've got center figured out, so they're going to go for the winger instead. If that's the case, maybe it's not worth the assets to try to trade down and build up the picks for whatever that's worth. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ryan has been waiting patiently and is going to kick us off this hour. Ryan, thank you for calling. You go ahead.
Hey, Jared. It sucks Prez got 5th, but I hope that Haggins falls. I would be calling San Jose, honestly, still, even if it's a 5th overall pick, and asking, what do they want for their 2nd overall pick and for us to keep the 5th overall pick? If that includes giving them Stasny and Willsby and Molendyke and 2 firsts this year and a 1st next year, I'm doing it. Because then you can sit there and grab Misa at 2nd and then sit there and hope at 5th going, well, if Haggins falls, well, I just got my top 2 centers for years and years and years to come. And I think the reason Haggins is falling is because he still has a couple more years of college that he can go back to and the people may not want to take that risk of him going back to college.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you right now, there is zero chance that San Jose is going to let you keep 5 and trade for 2. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think at the top of my head, what would you have to offer to San Jose? Doesn't need more picks. They already have 2 first-round picks in this draft. I mean, think about it. For Yaroslav Askarov, they traded you David Edstrom and Vegas's first-round pick. In order for they traded you what they got for Thomas Hurdle, they traded that for Yaroslav Askarov. They don't need more picks and prospects. They need blue line help. And they're going to want 5. That's crazy talk. They are going to want 5. You're not getting 2 and 5. And no, they don't look at Spencer Stasny and say, oh yeah, give us that guy. He missed half the season and he's not even that good. Brian, I love you, but give me a break. One texter says, yes, it's bad that the Predators are slotted 5th, but it got lost last night. The Preds have 2 more first-round picks. Yes, they are late, but regardless, you should be able to get a good nucleus based on chance alone. So it should be noted that the year that they drafted Shea Weber, he was their 4th pick in that draft. They had 3 second-round picks, and the first guy was some dude from the Czech Republic I've never heard of in my life and never played an NHL game. Like Constance Galantine or something like that. I've never heard of this guy before, and they picked him before they picked Shea Weber. There is something to that, but I don't get my hopes up over. They've got enough late first-round prospects on their team. They've got enough between Wood and Mullendijk and Kemmel and Stiga and Surin, and they've got an Andrew Gibson. Like, they've got enough of those guys. It's the high-impact, big-time player, the big boy forward that they don't have, and that's not what they need. One texter says, the lottery system for both the NBA and the NHL really seem like it's rigged. There's too often that big market teams get giant jump ups that statistically should not happen, and it never seems to happen for the little guy. I will say this. Oftentimes it feels like number 1 with a 0.01% chance of getting it, New York. And I'm like, okay. This happened 2 years ago with Chicago when they didn't have the best odds and they got Connor Bedard. Now, I am going to back the little guy for a second because New Orleans did win the ping pong ball for Zion Williamson, and that seemed to be a big deal. But I'm not going to get on the NHL and the lottery today because you saw the freaking ping pong balls. You saw them. You saw them put the ping pong balls in, and they did it with number 1. It was like watching Sesame Street. 1, 2, 3, and they put them all in there. And then they had the one guy that never turned his back away from the clock. It's like Kaiser Soze out there. And then finally, they had the one guy, like they picked the ping pong balls. I'm watching TV. I'm like, all right, so who's the pick? Who's the pick? And they're like, hold on. This guy's got to finish writing things out now. He's got to finish writing it all out. So let's take some time. Okay, hand it to the other guy. With the second pick, it will be San Jose. You can't say it's rigged when you saw the ping pong balls. Unless, again, Siegfried and Roy are out there, with Tigers. Voila. I mean, there's no way for me to think that it was rigged. Even though New York won, and statistically New York should not have won. There's no way I can get on board with that. I hear you, but I can't get on board. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. We continue. 1025, 106 for the game.
Chase, who is the best Predator of all time? Who would you say?
There's a statue of him.
Pecorino.
Pecorino. Where did he go? He must have been.
He was
third. No,
Yeah, he was in a round that doesn't exist anymore.
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, you can get good
guys,
players.
settle
Shea
down.
Weber was the second round.
Settle down.
What round were you drafted?
I was in the 8th round.
It
we
doesn't
don't have
exist
that anymore.
But you were pretty damn good.
When your best player for your organization doesn't have a round anymore, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
what
good
was
players.
Yossi?
Of course,
I would venture
everyone
to say-
wants the best player you can get, but you don't know what these kids are going to end up like, and so we are what we are. It is what it is.
Hal Gill last night, when everybody saw the lottery come down and the Predators get the single worst result that they could have gotten, Hal Gill's like, it's okay. What round was Pekka in? Which it was funny because I laughed about that. I mean, just talk about, and I know, I love Hal. And I think Hal sometimes hates coming on the show because he knows I'm going to ask him point blank about guys being fired or things that are touchy subjects. And Hal has developed it, and I got to give him credit for this. He's done a very good job of being like, well, Jared, you're asking me what I think, which means let me say what I'm going to say like that about everybody being upset about the 5th pick. Guys, Pekka's not good enough. Like, this pick needed to be the kind of player that takes you past where Pecorine was able to get you. That godforsaken season that you had this past year, it was so you could draft that player that can take you to the promised land. There's just not enough good 5th overall picks at that level. For instance, Elias Pettersson was 5th overall in 2017. And you would say, wow, Elias Pettersson, that's a big boy forward. He's had over 100 points in a season. But in the playoffs, he's a no factor. This past year, and I don't know what it was between him and JT Miller, but they didn't even make the playoffs because of whatever petty bullcrap got between them. Noah Hannafin, he's a top pair defenseman. Jared, yeah, but you need a big boy forward, and he's not a top pair defenseman on a championship club, at least not yet. Elias Lindholm, he was the 5th overall pick in 2013. Jared, you love Elias Lindholm. I do. As a second-line center. You need a first-line center. In that same draft in 2013, Nathan McKinnon went number 1 overall. Alexander Barkov went number 2. That's the kind of player you need. There just haven't been a lot of superstars that get picked 5th overall in the NHL. The best players, I mean, the real just freaking studs get picked number 1 or number 2. It's as simple as that. Apparently, the last Hall of Famer to be picked 5th overall in the NHL draft was Jeremy Roenick all the way back in 1988. Jeremy Roenick was picked 5th overall and ended up in the Hall of Fame. That's just not good enough. Like, it's not good. No, not good enough. And I know Hal will tell you, well, Pekka was an 8th round pick and we built a statue for him. Yeah. And the best Pekka could get you when he went on an absolute freaking heater, the best he could do was get you to the Stanley Cup final where you lost because the other team had Sidney Crosby. Again, it's not an accident. Nathan McKinnon wins cups. Steven Stamkos in his prime wins cups. Guys that were taken 1st overall. Crosby, Ovechkin, McDavid's going to win one soon enough. It's not an accident. I heard Barry talking yesterday when it came to the coach, and he was like, well, the year we won the cup in Washington, we didn't get it until 30 games into the season. You had Alexander Ovechkin. Not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison. So when I hear Hal trying to do the whole, it'll be okay, it's fine, it's whatever, I tell you, I'm not there. Also, the text line's convinced that they can still rig the balls with the weight to rig the draft lottery. I mean, people would go to jail if they ever got caught doing that. That is it for us. An early exit today because of Vandy baseball is up next. This is the one time a year where I got to root against them. They're playing Louisville, the Battle of the Barrel. Good luck to the Cards. Good luck to Coach McDonald. And if you're a Vanderbilt fan, I hate to say it, but I'm rooting against you tonight. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here. Great show today. David Reed, Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.